You ever felt like you're living on repeat? Like life hit pause, but you're still aging. You're still breathing, still scrolling, still showing up, but inside, you're stuck in regret. What if? Stuck in cycles. But let me tell you something, being stuck is not your identity. It's just a season. And seasons change. You ever walk into a room and forget why you went there? Not because you're losing your memory, but because your mind is so full of clutter, so full of distraction, that it can't even keep track of what matters anymore. That's what being stuck in life feels like. It's not just about being in a bad situation. It's about losing the clarity and momentum you once had. You wake up, go through the motions, smile when you're supposed to, post the happy pictures, laugh at the right jokes, but deep inside, there's this quiet frustration. A whisper saying, this isn't it. I was made for more than this. That whisper is the first sign that you're stuck. And the first step to getting unstuck is recognizing that you are. Most people never admit it. They think if they ignore it long enough, it'll just go away. But stuck doesn't go away. It settles in. It builds a life around you. You start adjusting your dreams downward, calling it being realistic. You shrink your vision to fit your surroundings. You tell yourself, maybe this is just the way things are. That's not peace. That's resignation. And resignation is the root of stagnation. The moment you stop believing that movement is possible is the moment stuck becomes permanent. But what if I told you that stuck isn't the problem? Denial is, because you can't break out of something you won't admit you're in. Some of us are calling our stuck seasons stability. We're calling them responsibility. We're hiding behind our routines, our business, our titles, acting like it's all good when our soul knows better. You can fake a smile, but you can't fake fruit, as it helps us. You can't fake fulfillment. And if you're not bearing fruit in your life, if you're not growing, stretching, becoming, then you're stuck. No matter how, together, everything looks on the outside. There's this part in the Bible where Jesus walks up to a man who's been lame for 38 years. 38 years of sitting in the same place, watching other people get their breakthrough. 38 years of hoping, hurting, waiting. And Jesus asks him a strange question. Do you want to get well? Now, that sounds almost offensive. Of course he wants to get well, right? But Jesus wasn't asking for information. He was exposing the man's mindset. Because sometimes you can be stuck so long that stuck starts to feel safe. You start building your identity around the thing you hate. You're not just in the condition is in you. And until you recognize it and decide, I don't want to live like this anymore, nothing changes. You can go to church, attend conferences, listen to motivational speakers, helps us. Take notes, post quotes. None of it will matter if you won't first say, I'm not okay. That admission isn't weakness. That's the strongest thing you can do. It takes courage to say, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not who know I could be. Something has to change. Sometimes you don't even realize how stuck you are until you see someone else walking in the freedom you were meant for. Someone else takes a risk. Someone else pursues a dream. Someone else speaks up. And something inside you starts to ache, not out of jealousy, but because it reminds you that you used to believe for more too. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's your wake-up call. That's your spirit telling you, we're not done yet. Recognizing that you're stuck doesn't mean you have all the answers. It just means you're willing to stop pretending, willing to stop numbing, willing to stop settling. It means you're ready to ask better questions, ready to interrupt the patterns, ready to let God step into the places you've been managing on your own as it helps us. Maybe you're stuck because you've been doing the right things with the wrong heart. Or maybe you've been waiting for a sign, and this message is your sign. Either way, the moment you say, this isn't working, is the moment new possibilities start to open. Don't underestimate the power of awareness. It might not feel like progress, but it's the seed of it. You can't heal what you won't reveal. You can't move until you name what's holding you. And today, maybe for the first time in a long time, you can say it. I'm stuck. And I don't want to stay here. That's not failure, as it helps us. That's the first step of freedom. Just because you're in a stuck place doesn't mean that's who you are. Too many people take a temporary season and start building their identity around it. You hit a rough patch, and now you've labeled yourself, I'm not capable, I'm not lovable. I'm always the one who gets left behind. That's the trap of stuck. It doesn't just hold your progress hostage. It starts to mess with how you see yourself. But just because you feel stuck doesn't mean you are stuck. Feelings are indicators, not definitions. You can't let a low moment dictate your value. See, life has this way of confusing location with identity. Just because you're in a dry place doesn't mean you are a dry person. Just because your business failed doesn't mean you're a failure. As just because that relationship didn't last doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. But if you're not careful, you'll start seeing yourself through the lens of what happened to you instead of who you were created to be. There's a story of a man in the Bible named Joseph, thrown in a pit by his brothers, falsely accused, locked in prison. He had every reason to believe he was stuck, but not once do we read about him giving into that identity. He kept showing up. He kept using his gift. He kept trusting that the story wasn't over. Why? Because Joseph understood something we often forget. Your location is not your label. Where you are right now is not who you are. But here's what stuck seasons try to do. They whisper lies in your ear. Lies like, if you were really talented, you wouldn't be here. Lies like, if God really had a purpose for you, things wouldn't have gone this way. Lies like, this is your fault. You deserve this. And if you let those lies sit long enough, they turn into labels. And those labels start limiting what you're willing to believe about yourself. That's when you stop dreaming, stop taking risks, stop hoping. Not because God changed his mind about you, but because you changed your mind about yourself. I need you to hear this. You are not your mistake. You are not your trauma. You are not the worst thing that ever happened to you. You are not your delay. You are not your dysfunction. You are not your divorce. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your disappointment. You are still who God said you are, even if you don't feel like it right now. And that's where the shift happens. The breakthrough doesn't begin when your circumstances change. It begins when your mindset does. When you stop asking, why am I still here? And start saying, even here, I still have purpose. When you stop disqualifying yourself because of where you've been and start believing that God can still use it all. You've got to stop seeing your life through the lens of limitation. You've got to stop editing your story down to the worst parts. Some of us have played the victim for so long, we don't know how to show up as anything else. But you are not a victim. You are a survivor. You are not stuck. You are being shaped. You are not finished. You are information. Sometimes what feels like punishment is actually preparation. Sometimes what feels like delay is divine development. And just because you're not where you want it doesn't mean you're not on the way. God doesn't waste seasons, as it helps us. He's not just the God of the breakthrough, he's the God of the in-between. He's the God of the process. And just because your current chapter is confusing doesn't mean the story won't make sense. Refuse to be defined by this season. Don't let the enemy convince you that your stuck place is your stopping point. Don't set up permanent residence in a temporary struggle. There's more for you. More grace, more healing, more growth. You might feel like you're buried, but maybe you're just planted. And the difference is what you believe about what comes next, as it helps us. So today, even if nothing around you changes, make the choice to stop agreeing with the lie that this is all you'll ever be. Declare it in faith. Even before you see it, I'm not stuck. I'm being strengthened. I'm not broken. I'm being built. I'm not over. I'm just getting started. And when you start to believe that, everything starts to shift. There's a story you've been telling yourself. We all have one. It plays quietly in the background of every decision, every hesitation, every dream we talk ourselves out of. And more often than not, that story isn't rooted in truth. It's rooted in fear, in shame, in disappointment. Somewhere along the way, we started writing a narrative that says, I always mess things up, or nothing good ever lasts, or I'll never be enough. And without realizing it, that story becomes the script we live by. It limits our actions, our confidence, and our expectations, as it helps us. But if you want to get unstuck in life, you have to shift the story you're telling yourself. Because here's the thing, helps us. The story you tell yourself shapes the life you live. If you keep telling yourself that you're not smart enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough, eventually you'll live down to that expectation. Your mind will find ways to reinforce what you already believe. That's not because it's true, but because we're wired to seek consistency between our internal story and our external reality, as it helps us. It's called confirmation bias. You'll ignore all the progress and highlight every setback just to prove yourself right. So if the story you're telling is broken, the life you're building will be too. Some of us have been stuck for so long, not because the opportunity isn't there, but because the old story won't allow us to recognize it. You can walk into a new room, meet a new person, start a new chapter. But if you bring the same old narrative, you'll sabotage what's fresh with what's familiar. As it helps us, you'll turn open doors into closed ones, not because they weren't real, but because you couldn't believe they were for you. It might sound simple, but the greatest warfare in your life doesn't happen around you. It happens within you. The greatest enemy to your purpose isn't your past, it's the perception you've created because of your past. You didn't fail because you were unworthy. You failed because life hit hard and you made meaning out of it. And that meaning turned into a story. And that story started sounding like truth. It helps us. But just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's accurate. Sometimes we hold on to dysfunction not because we like it, but because we've never seen ourselves outside of it. The good news, stories can change. You don't have to keep rehearsing the one that keeps you small. You don't have to keep quoting the one that keeps you afraid. You can rewrite the story not by ignoring the pain, but by reframing it. You are not a victim of what happened. You're a witness of what God can do with broken things. You're not the person who got rejected. You're the person who's learning how to receive real love. You're not the one who gave up. You're the one who paused, regrouped, and came back stronger. You've got to start speaking a different story over your life. Not fake, not forced, but full of faith. words that stretch you into the next version of you, words that pull you forward instead of tying you to the past. Start saying, I am still growing, I am still called, I am still worthy. Say it until it sounds more true than the lie. Say it until your mind catches up with your spirit. And don't wait for your feelings to agree. Faith doesn't ask for permission from emotion. Sometimes you have to lead with declaration, even when doubt is louder. You don't have to feel it to speak it. You just have to believe that something shifts when you do. That heaven responds when you align your mouth with your purpose. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about holy perspective. This is about taking the pen back from fear and handing it to your faith. It's about refusing to let your past write the next chapter. Your future deserves a better narrator, one who sees your potential, one who knows your calling, one who understands that every broken piece is still part of the masterpiece. So what story have you been telling yourself? And more importantly, are you ready to tell a new one? Because the moment you shift the story, you shift your identity. And when your identity shifts, so does your direction. You may have been stuck, but you're not sentenced to stay there. Change the story, and you'll change the outcome. Speak the truth, and you'll start walking in freedom. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck in life isn't because they lack potential. It's because they're surrounded by the wrong voices. The truth is, who you listen to shapes who you become. You don't even realize how much of your internal dialogue has been influenced by the people around you. Friends, family, culture, social media. They all speak into your life, but not every voice deserves access to your heart. Some voices build you, others bind you. And if you're not intentional about what you allow in, you'll end up carrying weight that was never yours to bear. Have you ever had a dream or an idea, and before you even got it out of your mouth, someone rolled their eyes, shrugged it off, gave you that be realistic look, and in that moment, something shut down inside you? That's the power of words. That's the power of voices. One sentence can sabotage your momentum if it lands on an insecure heart. And the worst part, you start repeating those words to yourself. Their doubt becomes your inner monologue. And now you're not just battling external resistance. You're battling internal agreement with that resistance. Sometimes the most dangerous voice is the one in your own, and that voice was trained by people who never saw your calling. That's why getting unstuck means guarding your ears. You've got to tune out some voices in order to hear the right one. And I don't mean just haters. I mean, meaning people who love you, but don't understand the assignment on your life. People who want to keep you safe, but their version of safety is keeping you small. People who advise you from a place of fear, not faith. They're not evil, they're just limited. And you can't let their limitation define your expectation. Jesus once healed a girl who was believed to be dead. But before he did, he cleared the room. He told the mourners, the doubters, the noise makers to get out. Why? Because sometimes resurrection requires disconnection. Some atmospheres are too heavy with disbelief for a miracle to move. You've got to clear the room. That means setting boundaries. That means protecting your mind. That means saying, I love you, us, but I can't let your doubt infect my destiny. And don't just clear out the wrong voices. Replace them with the right ones. You need voices that remind you who you are, voices that call out your potential, not your problems. Voices that don't just hype you up, but hold you accountable. Voices that speak life truth and vision when you can't see clearly for yourself. You weren't meant to do this alone. God places people in your life for alignment, encouragement, and direction. But if you're drowning in the wrong noise, you'll miss the ones who were sent to pull you out. That's why community matters. Not just any community. Faith-filled, forward-moving community. People who pray with you, challenge you, sharpen you. People who won't let you settle. People who see you slipping and say, nope, not today. You've come too far to stay stuck now. You need those voices. You need that circle, because your environment will either stretch you or suffocate you. Some of us are stuck because we're in circles that celebrate comfort. Everyone's playing it safe. Everyone's talking about the same problems, but not doing anything different. And you're wondering why you can't grow. Growth requires friction. It requires being around people who think bigger, live bolder, believe deeper. People who don't shrink when things get hard. People who carry vision in their voice. But ultimately, the loudest voice has to be the voice of God. Above all the noise, above all the opinions, above all the doubt. You've got to tune in to what he says about you. That's the voice that created you, called you, and still believes in you. That voice says you're chosen. That voice says you're equipped. That voice says you're not stuck. You're being set up for something greater. And when his voice becomes your soundtrack, everything changes. You stop living for approval. You stop reacting to criticism. You stop doubting your every move. You move with confidence, not because you've got it all figured out, but because you know who's leading you. So today, check the volume. Whose voice is loudest in your life right now? Whose words have you been rehearsing in your mind? If it's not building you, it's breaking you. And you've got the authority to turn it off. Get around voices that pull you forward. Cut off the hold you back. Because freedom starts when you stop listening to lies and start leaning into truth as it helps us. Sometimes the reason you stay stuck isn't because you're not moving. It's because you forgot why you started moving in the first place. Life has a way of making you forget. You get caught up in the grind, in the disappointment, in the distractions. The vision that once set your soul on fire becomes buried under responsibilities, routines, and reasons why maybe now isn't the right time. You start settling for survival when you were created for significance. You start managing life instead of mastering the purpose behind it. That's why getting unstuck means going back to your why, reconnecting with your purpose. Purpose is what gives pain a point. It's what gives work meaning. It's what keeps you anchored when the storm hits. And if you lose sight of it, you'll lose motivation, passion, and direction. You'll start drifting, still moving, but not going anywhere meaningful. That's one of the most dangerous places to be. Not stopped, but scattered. Busy, but not built. Active, but not aligned. You're doing things, but not the right things. But not the right, you're checking boxes, but not chasing calling. You weren't created just to get through the week, pay some bills, and watch Netflix until you die. There is something deeper on the inside of you, a call, a burden, a vision. And even if it's been pushed down for years, under fear, under disappointment, under the opinions of others, it's still there. And it's still real. You may have silenced it, but it hasn't died. You may have ignored it, but it hasn't left. That purpose is still waiting for you to pick it back up. Sometimes getting unstuck isn't about doing something new. It's about remembering something old. The thing God spoke to you when no one else was listening. It helps us. The thing that made your heart race and your eyes light up before life beat you down. You've got to go back to that as us. Because when purpose returns, power does too. You stop waiting for external motivation and start moving from internal conviction. You stop needing applause and start living from assignment. And purpose isn't about a title or platform or some big public thing. It's deeper than that. Purpose is knowing why you're here. Purpose is knowing what you carry. Purpose is knowing who you're meant to impact. And when you walk in that, when you start seeing your life through that lens, everything changes. You approach your relationships differently. You make decisions differently. You endure hardship differently. Because now, you're not just reacting to life. You're responding to a call. Don't confuse your current frustration with a lack of purpose. Sometimes frustration is actually a sign of purpose. It's that holy discontent that says, there has to be more than this. It's not something to escape. It's something to explore. What if that H in your spirit is God's way of waking you up? What if that restlessness is Him stirring something in you that's been dormant for too long? The problem is we get so distracted. We compare our calling to someone else's highlight reel. We chase validation instead of vision. We trade purpose for popularity and wonder why we feel empty. But purpose doesn't always look impressive. It looks faithful. It looks consistent. It looks like obedience when no one's watching. And that's where breakthrough begins. Not when you go viral, but when you go deep. When you recommit to the why that's bigger than your feelings. You've got to stop letting life push you around and start letting purpose pull you forward. When you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can keep going even when it gets hard. You can keep showing up even when it's slow. You can keep believing even when nothing's moving. Because you're not just hustling, you're honoring something sacred. Purpose is what gives pressure meaning. It's what turns resistance into refinement. It's what turns delays into development. And even when you feel stuck, if your purpose is clear, your spirit stays moving. You stay locked in. You stay grounded. So today, go back to the vision, back to the dream, back to the moment when you knew you were meant for something more. Let that stir your faith. Let that awaken your drive. Let that remind you that being stuck is not the end, it's the reset. And this time, you're not moving for applause. You're not moving for approval. You're moving because something deep in your spirit said, I was made for this. And when that kind of fire gets lit again, nothing can keep you stuck. Not fear, not failure, not frustration. Because purpose has a way of pulling you through places that would have destroyed you before. This time, you remember who you are. This time, you remember why you started. And that changes everything.